people for this panel. And to start it off, I'm going to bring in Chris Welsh with his wonderful EV RE20 mic. How you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. You know, a big reason why we got to get to that 3,000 marker too is because we got an In This League t-shirt that is going to be available. People can go check it out at Teespring ITL store. They can peruse the whole thing and they can pick it. So get to that 3,000 marker, get an ITL shirt.
Yeah, let's have a goal to hit the 3,000 during your panel. It'd be very fitting. I would absolutely love to do that. So yeah, go to go.rallyup.com/PitchCon. Support a great cause and what we're doing here today. Welsh, it's great to have you here, man. You know,
love being here.
You know, you have, of course, the Prospects One podcast that you do. So who better to lead a panel on scouting and evaluation than you? I'm going to keep bringing in more people. We have James Anderson here. How you doing, James?
Good. What's up, guys?
There's that bandana. Yes.
Back.
Love to see you. Obviously, you do great work at RotoWire, and yeah, I mean, this is scouting and evaluations, just about how you perceive these prospects. We got a little bit in that last panel, but yeah, really, thanks so much for being a part of this.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun last time around, and happy to be back. I love the panel I'm on. I love this group of evaluators, so excited for it.
I love that hair. God, I love that that hair and that bandana. I told James last time, I mean to hijack it, but last time he was on my Prospect One show, I said the only thing he's missing in all of his branding is branding a bandana. He has got to have a real JR bandana for the branding. Get this man that money.
I need your ITL merch, guys, to help me out.
I'm doing it. I'm on it.
There we go. Next we have Kate Preusser. How you doing, Kate?
Hi, it's Preusser, by the way.
Preusser, I'm so sorry.
I sent my
first time I've said it.
That's okay. I sent my name pronunciation to somebody else, I think. So some random person knows how to say my name now.
There we go. Well, Preusser, of course, at Lookout Landing runs that site, and you have a lot of experience as well as scouting and evaluating. So I'm really happy that you're able to be a part of this.
I'm excited to be here. I have much less experience than my fellow panelists, so I'm actually looking forward to learning from them, especially with regards to fantasy. Should I get a bandana though? I feel underdressed.
I do think you should.
I kind of want one too now.
Yeah.
And James, you're just ruining it for all of us. Actually, you know what? You're setting a good example for all of us. That's what I should say. Last and certainly not least is Chris Blessing. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? Can you guys hear me fine?
A little quiet.
Yeah, a little quiet.
Are you driving to the panel?
Actually, I'm at the ballpark now. So, if you guys could hear me, could switch it off my my car.
Yeah, it'd be a little loud. Either get closer, or maybe if you have that Bluetooth, maybe take that off.
You know, maybe I can do something.
Yeah.
How's that? Maybe that's better. I'm glad to see you're keeping warm for us here inside of that car. Hope it's okay.
Yeah.
You got the good fleece.
Oh, there's that. There are those tones. There you go, Blessing.
All right, awesome, man. Then that's good.
Well, I'm happy you can make it here, Chris. I really wouldn't feel like a prospect panel without you. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. As always, I apologize for the small screen, but I had to make do. I double booked myself scouting some high school players, so.
It's all good.
And where are you?
Go to it, and you'll have a bigger screen. So, good luck, guys. You got this.
That's a secret. Somewhere in Georgia right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you can be outside.
No, it's like 40-something degrees, and
Do you think that's
it's
cool?
going down to 22, and I'm going to be here till like 10 o'clock. So I can't really be outside right now.
Well, get the heat on, and how appropriate too. You're the man of mystery that we'll get to. So I'm going to host us up here. Some people know me, some people don't. Chris Welsh, find me on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh. My handle is on there. I host Prospect One, and I host a million other shows within this league. But for this panel, it's appropriate for Prospect One. And the man of mystery, Chris Blessing, you can find on Twitter at @C_Blessing. Covers prospects over at Baseball HQ. Blessing, you've always got something in the work. You are a man of mystery. Like, we know you cover prospects at Baseball HQ, but I have not, and I've known Blessing for a long time. Chris was on. He's interviewed guys with me. One of my very first interview, Bobby Dahlbeck, you were with, or maybe it was my second. We've been on the field together. But I have never not known you to have something. We were like, listen, I can't talk about this.
Yeah.
But so you're a man of mystery.
Yes.
Tell everybody what's going on with you at Baseball HQ. And of course, don't tell anybody the things you can't tell us.
Yeah. So like the things I can tell you, I can say that I do help out a team, scout some amateur players for the first few months of the year before minor league season starts. Access, all that good stuff. So like it helps me get access and get to places and find players. Right now, Baseball HQ, we're getting ready for First Pitch Florida, which is a virtual event this year. So, a lot of our planning is in that. We'll have a prospect Q&A. I'll be there with Eric Loganhagen and Emily from The Athletic.
Emily Walden. Great.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. One of my great buddies in the industry, James Anderson, Real JR Anderson is the Twitter handle. Everybody knows you can catch him over at RotoWire. And of course, you can hear him on SiriusXM. He's the lead prospect analyst and assistant baseball editor at RotoWire, doing all the stuff, all the things, and taking out time whenever he can to do hour-plus long podcasts with me. And I've opened his eyes to hour-plus podcasts, knowing that there's no longer just radio hits. James, you do a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to talk about, we all have really unique, different takes on scouting and evaluating, but tell everybody what you got going on over at RotoWire.
Yeah, so just pumping out a lot of content about prospects for dynasty leagues. You mentioned the SiriusXM radio show I do with Clay Link every Saturday and Sunday. Do the prospect podcast with Clay Link every Wednesday, and then have my top 400 prospect rankings that I keep updated year round.
Now, now am I gonna say it right? Preusser, right?
Preusser, yes.
Boom. See, I'm no Nick Pollock. I got this right. Nick
Oh.
Preusser. You can find on Twitter at Kate Preusser. Also covers minor leagues and amateur baseball for the Lookout Landings, and that's so interesting. I'm going to talk about it here in a second. We have got such an interesting scope of different people. Tell everybody about, because you're a little bit more team centric in that. Explain that to everybody and everything you have going on.
Yeah, I would say I definitely am looking forward to learning a lot today. So my approach is definitely a little different in that I'm looking a lot at players who have already been drafted but haven't made the majors yet. So the guys in our farm system, guys in other farm systems who might be potential trade targets. And then we do a lot with the draft, kind of analyzing what. So Joe Doyle is our main guy who has just tons and tons of profiles on all these up and coming guys in the draft. So, but we do a little of that as well. But yeah, I would say that I definitely don't come at things from a fantasy slant. So I'm interested in hearing about how you scout differently for the fantasy community.
And I think that's a lot of what we're going to cover across the board here, because I was really fascinated when I saw that I was on this panel evaluating and scouting, because it's funny because Nick says, hey, I can't think of a better person. And maybe I'm a little self-deprecating, but I go, I can think of 30. I can think of 30 better people that could be in this because, I mean, I'm not, let's take Eric Longenhagen, who you just talked about, Blessing, who's going to be at the First Pitch in Florida. It's one of the great minds in scouting. And none of us, Blessing, you're probably the closest to it, is probably in the most traditional sense of scouting. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. I want to talk about how we all got there. I want to go through some of the intricacies of how you adjust evaluating with fantasy and not fantasy. And for everybody that's on here, just want to let you know, we probably will answer some questions. If you have them, save them for now, probably the last 20 minutes of this. If you have got scouting, evaluating, prospect-based questions, I think we could pop some up here and we can go through this. So from this perspective of evaluating and scouting, we are all different. So I've got a podcast. I got lots of podcasts. I'm a podcast person. So how do I fit in this? Well, I live in Arizona, and that alone just enables me all of this access and ability, because you have got the half of baseball's complex level here. You've got rookie ball, you've got Arizona Fall League, and you've got spring training. So I've got this year-round access that a while back, and this is going to be into the first question, is I want to find out how we all got started in whatever capacity of evaluating we are. And this is going to be a multifaceted question, because I decided in doing my podcast that I always had a passion for prospects. And I literally got myself up, went to a backfield, and I never left. And I kept going. Padres, Cubs, Mariners. Go to the backfield, 110, 115 degree weather, whether it's hot or cold, going out there, seeing guys at their youngest level, then doing the same thing. I put myself into it. Did I have qualifications for it? Nope. Just my eye, just my acclimate to baseball. But I put myself into it. And I've seen some really talented people do the same thing of just inserting themselves into the world and learning and being better from there. That's as simple as I did it. So over time, I build reps. I see players. I can start building basis on players and comparing them off of each other. And I talk to really smart people and meet really smart people. Me and James, Tex, Blessing, Tex. Kate, this is the first time I'm getting to spend time with you. But as I go through, we talk. We go, we see players. I can put people on. I put plenty of people on to James. James has definitely brought me down a couple notches on some players I get too excited about before. But the way I got it started in evaluating and scouting was literally just stepping my foot when no one asked me to be there. And a lot of people can do that. You can just put yourself in there. So, Kate, I'm going to start with you here. How did you get started in this? It simply maybe taking the job, but you covering minor leagues and covering minor leaguers and amateur for the Lookout Landing. How did you get put into that position to start evaluating?
Yeah, so I've been running Lookout Landing, which is SB Nation's Mariner site. People know it probably because the great Jeff Sullivan, who now works for the Rays, started it. It's kind of one of the more well-known SBN sites. But when I took it over, I was like, how do I make this distinctly mine? Like, what improvements can I bring to this? And there wasn't a ton of minor league coverage before, so I really started that, which meant I had to teach myself about the minor leagues because I didn't know anything. I started from the ground. Like, I never played baseball. People always ask, like, oh, what level did you play to? And I'm like, I got hit in Charlie Brown baseball a bunch because I'm left-handed, and I quit.
So you tell them Charlie Brown next time. You go Charlie Brown, and
yeah,
like,
the Charlie Brown level.
Yeah, everyone will get that.
All the CYO kids will pick up that reference. So yeah, I just had to really throw myself into learning about it. So, and it's not like you can. I had to find that community. It's not like out there as much as some other things. So I read a bunch of books and I started keeping this notebook that I still keep today. I did a women's scouting school in Arizona. Actually, that was really cool. Put on by somebody who works for the Diamondbacks. I did the MLB scout school just this past winter. That was virtual, led by Bill Bavasi, famous Mariners name. I did another scouting school that kind of cropped up. I just take whatever opportunities I can to learn because I didn't start from most of the women who are in scouting now. And I've gone to panels at like the winter meetings and stuff about that. They grew up with a scouting dad. Like Amanda Hopkins scouts for the Mariners. She had a dad who was in scouting, and that's a lot of the way that women are in scouting now. So part of that is expanding the field to get more women involved on the prospect side, on the scouting and evaluation side. So that's why I signed up for the panel too, was to kind of provide that representation. So yeah, it's just been a lot of, and like you said, finding smarter people. One of my teammates at Lookout Landing, who writes about the minor leagues with us, did play college baseball. So I lean on him a lot. I'm like, what does that feel like? What does this? And my background's in teaching too. And I really love the process of development. So slowly covering minor leagues and amateur baseball and scouting got to be just a bigger part of, I just think it's really fun. It's really fun to see a guy say, if he can just do this, and then he goes and does it, and you see a prospect break out. That's my favorite thing.
You're almost jumping in. I'm going to stick with you for a second because I don't want to do this and then go another question, because this is kind of an encapsulated question. It is funny. I want to comment on what you said and piggybacking on my thing of finding smarter people. I would worry if I ever thought I was the smartest person in the room,
God, no.
because then I would think there's something dramatically wrong, because you should always be questioning yourself. I don't think you should ever have, really, maybe with anything with life, you should have a full comfortability and you should always be seeking and searching. But you started to touch on this just a tiny bit. How through this process that you just explained to us how you got into it and how you started, but how have you developed and what is your process for evaluating? What, even if it's only a couple key things that you're looking for, how do you evaluate now?
How I evaluate now is, I would say, and I know that we'll get into a little bit of the video versus in-person scouting, but I'm not in Arizona. I'm in Washington State, so I'm limited to what kinds of in-person looks I can get. But what has really changed in my evaluation, the thing that I learned that I think was most, it was innate to me, but when I heard it explained from a scouting director, I was like, oh, of course, is just getting to the park really early and watching from the moment a guy steps off the bus or the moment he gets out of his parents' car and watching how he comports himself, who's carrying his gear, how he interacts with teammates. When he shows up to the field, are they super excited to see him? You know, how does he interact with them? Is he a leader, a quiet leader? Is he a guy like other people kind of shy away from? How much effort does he put into it? All these little like things that tell me how professional he is and how serious he is. And you can even see that that's primarily when you're scouting amateurs, but you can even see that like up to guys. When I went to the Arizona Fall League, there have been prospects I've dropped in my estimation because you show up, it's 2 weeks into the Fall League. Some of the guys are kind of over it by now, and they're just being goofy in their warm-ups, and they're not really working as hard as others. So actually, just that's the thing that I've changed the most.
I completely agree with that. That's something I've done for a long time, and I've kind of touted on my shows. Is I'm very interested in the entire scope of it and watching it. James, let's go over to you here on the same exact question. How you got started, and yours is probably even an interesting take in being involved in RotoWire, and we'll talk about some of the other things as far as versus what we do, but I'm curious how you got started and how you evaluate now.
Yeah, so I started working for RotoWire in 2011 and really kind of fell in love with Dynasty baseball sort of around that same time, and just really just couldn't get enough of the prospect side of things. And I just started paying more attention to like prospects than big leaguers. And that sort of started showing up in my work. And I became the site's lead prospect analyst in around 2015. And yeah, I mean, I sort of feel like a bit of a fish out of water on this panel as well, just because like I definitely don't think of myself as a scout. I mean, I think like Blessing, I don't. Blessing's probably seen like 20 times as many games, like 30 times as many games than I have in person. And I'm analyzing guys on video and statistics mostly. And part of that's just because I live in Wisconsin and there's just not a ton of baseball to see around here. But part of it is I have so many sort of responsibilities that go into my job that I need to know the entire prospect universe. I can't focus in on just like one guy or one team or one league. So I'm following guys based on video and statistics when they come into pro ball, whether it's through the international market or the draft. And then I'm just paying attention to them every step of the way and doing the best I can to kind of analyze, who's moving up, who's moving down. So it's definitely, I don't consider myself a scout, but I do kind of consider myself an evaluator of talent. I guess I think there's a bit of a difference there.
No, you did a great job on that exact last point, because let's all take a step back for a second as we're going to go to Blessing to understand that, I think there is a generic title of evaluating and scouting, and there are so many different ways. And sometimes this is just being a talent evaluator. None of us work for teams, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know what you're talking about here, but scouting a player has a lot of different legs and people do it differently. I'm not affiliated with a team, but scouts would see me every other day on the backfields and I'm scouting for my own purposes. Scouting is done in a bunch of different ways. And we're actually going to go to that here in just one second. But Mr. Chris Blessing, who has all the secrets, how did you get started in your evaluating? You're at Baseball HQ. You got lots of stuff on the side. And how do you evaluate now? And I know it's a very broad question, but try as you can, how you got started and how you evaluate.
Yeah, so in 2009, I was just a Mets fan who was living here in Georgia, which is kind of depressing to be a Mets fan here in Georgia. And Went down, watched the Rome Braves, which is the Braves. Well, at that time, this the Class A Sally League affiliate. Now it's High A. Played the Savannah Sand Gnats. Saw a pitcher named Kyle Allen. I know you haven't heard of him. He had a back injury. He was one of the better prospects in that league that year. Julio Teheran was in it, and Jerry Familia was the guy I saw. This might have been 2010. I might be dating myself a little incorrectly, but started talking to a guy that was writing about prospects. His name was Mike Newman. I think he quit in 2014, so like probably a lot of people don't know who he was. But he worked at Fangraphs. He was there with Kylie McDaniel for a little bit, a few other people, and he just kind of took me under his wing. I noticed some things in that start of Kyle Allen that I watched that, like, you know, he said I knew some things. So I started going to games. My first report was on Jonathan Singleton. A blast from the past there.
Smoke him if you got him.
Yep. And that's how I started. I didn't come to the fantasy side until, I guess, partially in 2014. But all the way in 2015 when I started with HQ. So how things have kind of changed. You know, I do a lot of what James does. I watch a lot of video. I joke that, like, I've gone from an in-person scout to like this hybrid, and that's really where prospect coverage and also like how the teams are covering people. This is opening day of Division I, and I'm going to tell you, I'm at a high school ball field basically, and I'm seeing scouts that I would not normally see at high school game on D1 opening day. So like we're seeing different, video is more available in the college ranks. So, you know, teams are having to, because of budget reasons and other reasons, you know, transfer to be,
Chris,
video scouts.
Let me ask you real quick though, because we're going to hit this exact subject here in just 1 second, because you guys have all hit this. So I need to move this question up. But give me something specific in how you evaluate and what you're looking to evaluate. Because let me throw this at you. Let me throw this to all you guys. I feel like I'm a chameleon of sorts, or I take little pieces of all of you guys and do it. Because Kate, the same way. I like to be there before anybody else is at a stadium, and I watch how they interact with teammates. I have this memory. Helio Ramos, after he was drafted, I'm at the Giants ballpark, and I'm there before the game. And two kids come up over on the sides, and they're like, Helio. And Helio comes over, very nice guy, signs autographs for them. Mind you, this is 110 degrees in Arizona during the AZL. People don't know. And his teammates, they're all like, oh, they're making fun of him. They're like, Helio, hey. They're all like, everyone wants Helio Ramos. And they were just kind of, busting a little bit. But you could see the teammates saw the star power. They saw he was a guy. It's a tiny thing that what does it equate to? But it's one of those intangibles of watching how players conduct themselves, how teammates treat them. James, same thing. You can't deny the stats. You can't deny video. And Chris, the same way of going like full in scouting, of focusing guns, getting velocity, making your check marks, all of those things play a role in how I approach. And I'm nobody, but I do a little bit of what you all do. So let me just throw in this question. And Chris, I'm going to come back to you because you can tackle the last part of what I asked you of like, is there something specific of what you do? But there is an age-old question, and it's usually by people that don't have the wherewithal to do it themselves. But there is a thought process with many people that if you are not in person, if you are not seeing these players, how can you scout? But let's throw that word out for a second, because most of us aren't scouts. How can you evaluate? How can you properly know these prospects if you're not there in person? So there's become this really divided debate of video versus in person. And some people just can't figure out if one is better than the other or if one doesn't belong. So Blessing, I come back to you to say, can video and in-person live together? And can someone be a proper evaluator of prospects by simply checking out video? And you kind of seem like you were answering that with how teams do it.
Yeah. So we'll just, I mean, it's not a secret that the Astros haven't had pro scouts for a while, right? I don't think that's a secret.
Probably
The
to some people
Astros
listening,
haven't
but
had
yeah.
pro scouts for a while. I think Goldstein even covered it in his Welcome Back to the Media World article at Fangraphs. They're relying on video, and they're relying on TrackMan
Data.
or
Yeah.
whatever that data is. So that's what's kind of happened. Now, and I know James is probably here, and I know all of you are probably here. You're trying to get that data. You're trying to get whatever inch of data that you can get on a player, whether it's his launch angle, whether it's his his mile per hour, his average mile per hour off the bat, like that kind of stuff. You're trying to get that. You can be a video scout. There is some things that are just missing that, like, you have to try to fill in the blanks.
Give me one thing that's missing, because I like that you said that, but
Well,
give me something in your eyes.
For instance, like right now, I have to, right after we get off the phone, I'm going to go and I'm essentially scouting infield. That's what I'm doing. You can't see a first step of anybody in any of our videos. So you can't see that kind of stuff. You can't see his jump when he's trying to steal a base. There's missing elements. You can put together things on the hit tool. You can put things together for pitching and that kind of thing. But it's like when you're trying to search for a good minor league feed, like Hartford. Hartford has a great minor league feed. Like, you're still missing little bits of information. So, like, the goal is to try to get that and try to try to fill out that whole piece of the puzzle that I'm able to get at the game.
Yeah.
I only have coverage, like, I'm down to, like, I don't know, coverage of 13 affiliates in this area because of this realignment from 20. And, like, I mean, it's going to be all video for me on a lot of things. For instance, things that are changing, I am not going to be at the ballpark as much during the minor league season, not just because of COVID, but because I need to work smarter. That's the whole thing, is I need to work smarter because I have so many people to cover that are outside of my geographical area, just like what James does, and just like what Kate does. Kate can't see every Mariners farm system, right?
I cannot go to Little Rock, nor do I want to.
No. I mean, that's it. And that's the thing is, and Chris, you got it lucky. You're at the complex, and at least for 16 teams, you can try to see something that's going on. So you can, like, you have more coverage than anybody. I'm like Eric, at Fangraphs, like that. I mean, that's his greatest advantage. He's a great evaluator, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have to travel as much as other people.
Yeah, Eric is out here with me, and I see him out there, and more people have moved out here to do that. Let's keep rolling with this. James, I think you kind of answered this a little bit in that, you already said you're predominantly video. I'm obviously very curious at your take of when you hear people saying, in person versus video. But also, I'd like to get an intangible of what you look for, because you are a predominantly video. You do stats as well, but you're looking at video. Give me a couple things that you're looking for in that video. But of course, what do you say to the idea of in-person versus video scouting, evaluating?
I mean, you're definitely getting a better eval on a guy if you're seeing him in person. I don't think that's debatable. But you could get an eval on 20 guys in video in the time it would take you to get one on, like, one guy in person. I mean, it's just more efficient. You're not getting as good of an eval, but you can do it for more players. You can save a lot of time doing it that way. And I usually just kind of use the stats to kind of help me along the way. I think when I'm looking at video, I am looking at the player's body first and foremost. Just like, is he athletic? How do I see his body aging over these next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Is it going to cost him some athleticism? Is he going to grow into some power, like that type of thing? I mean, that's like the first thing. That's something you're definitely not getting if you're just looking at their Fangraphs page. And I'm looking at bat speed. I'm looking at, does this guy look really bad on his whiffs? Does he have some really good takes? Does this pitcher clearly know how to sequence and how to set guys up? There's a lot of stuff that you can get just without a ton of time. I mean, you can get that from just like 90 minutes. And I mean, I have like all this stuff installed on my computer to like speed past like parts that I don't want to see, or just really kind of get really efficient with my time that way. But I mean, I think anyone that says like it's the same, or like it's not the same, you get a better eval if you see the person in person.
Yeah, but there's too much negativity for me in it, that there's negativity towards predominant video scouting, and I think people are missing the point, especially when your eyes have been there long enough. It's something I'm going to talk about here in a second. But Kate, you're kind of a cool mixture of both of these. Like you and I kind of sit in this same little world where, what video you get if you're hyper focused compared to in person. What do you think of the idea of video versus in-person scouting and evaluating?
One advantage of video is that it allows you to slow down, isolate, repeat, things that you wouldn't get as an in-person look. So especially with pitching mechanics, this is really helpful to me to look at what his load is and what his arm path is, and how he uses his back leg and things of that nature, which I don't always see immediately just from sitting in the stands. So that really helps me zero in. Also, like, I use social media a bunch. I follow these players online. I see like what they post. So again, this kind of goes into like scouting the person too, like to kind of see what they're doing out there. But I look at what a guy posts and what his body looks like in his various pictures, and you can stare at it without, being creepy in person, and start to do that like body projection a little.
Just like walk up to a guy, you're like, you have great legs. And they're like, what? Like, no, the low, it's really good for the lower half of the load. I'm not trying to.
You got base stealing ankles. I mean, that's a creepy thing to say to someone in person, but I can see that if I am staring at a picture. And God bless Dominican prospects and their love of being shirtless all the time, because it really helps you evaluate the like shoulder torso area. So yeah, I think there are definitely some advantages to it. Obviously, you miss out on that stuff like showing up early and watching the drills and the first step in scouting infield. I think you really do. And even with MILB TV, even with streams that are great, like I think that in the Texas League, I was always so glad when the Travelers, which they have a pretty crummy camera, I hope that gets upgraded, but I was always excited when they go play Oklahoma City or Tulsa. Any Dodgers affiliate always has like the nicest stuff. So you're a little limited in that way. But even with the nice ones, it's not always on the player you want to watch. You don't get to see things like his reaction time, how he reads about a ball off a bat, that kind of thing. So
and
positives and negatives.
Yeah. I mean, one thing too, if you ever get into evaluating scouting, you have to really be comfortable talking about men's body and whatever, whoever you are, you're going to talk about it a lot to uncomfortable levels. But, I would also put in with video, here's like a obvious one. This is going to be a funny thing here that we all realize, but every video is positive. There's all the positives. You get some people do it really great, and they can give you these 15-minute stretches where you can see it tire at bats. But one thing that can be negative about video is when you're just looking at all the highlights. Don't get me wrong. I go see a highlight and I lose myself, and I get one good swing and I'm like, let's go. I'm all in. So that is one thing that video misses. But here's one thing that's really, really been good for me with video. It's been a combination of the two. I have created this bank since like 2014, 15-ish, where I've created this bank of players in my head. And I start to have markers, like fantasy, we had the Wandy line, people remember. And I'll create these markers where I can set them up for pitchers and hitters. And I can be like, where does this guy meet in this marker of this player that I've evaluated before? This in 2019, out here in the AZL, I'm one of the luckiest SOBs on the planet, because I got amateur level evaluation of CJ Abrams, who hit 400 here. And we might be talking about number 1 overall pick. Bobby Witt, another top 10 pick. Marco Luciano out here, and Corbin Carroll. That alone in 2019, those are markers of players that I can go out and compare against each other. And then I can take that to video, and I can use what I've seen in person over a longer period of time, and I can marry the two. And that's always been helpful for me. They can live in the same world. And, this is a shout to James. I think James is putting proof of somebody that knows how to evaluate stats and evaluate video. Scouting and evaluating is not just about in-person stuff. And, this panel was picked in part of, some of our prospect prowess, but, some of the people we see, I've seen games with James. We watched Arizona Fall League, but it's also about properly being able to evaluate the intangibles. And that's something that everybody here does. Let's try to burn through the next couple, because I do want to open it up. If you guys don't want to, don't worry about it. I want to open it up to anybody that's watching on Twitch, because I think it's out on Twitch only right now. If you have a question about evaluating a player, you want to get a take, put it in the comments. I'm going to monitor, and I might pick a couple. If you don't worry about it. We got plenty of stuff because we're all talkers here and we're rocking, but we may try to burn through a couple if we can answer at the end. This is a very important question to me. And Kate, I'm going to pick on you first, because you were like, how are we going to do this with fantasy? I'm not really a fantasy person. So I'm going to ask you first, because I want to get what you think your take is. And we're going to work backwards, because here is one of the most difficult things. Let's not get it wrong here, that, the prospect boom is so much because of fantasy. People play fantasy. They're more interested in dynasty leagues. I've talked to Longenhagen about this, that it's like, this is something you got to understand. Like, fantasy people are driving so much of this. So don't ignore it. But there are so many lists, prospect lists, that are not driven to fantasy. And if you did pay attention to it from that perspective, you can kind of hurt yourself. It doesn't work that way. It was my very first episode of Prospect One I ever did. I had Jonathan Mayo on, and that was something I touched on him, because they had Ahmed Rosario like 3 overall. And I was like, this can't be fantasy, right? Like, and he's like, well, no, if it were fantasy, we'd be down in the 20s. So people have to figure out how to consume these lists and how to figure them out with so many and amazing jobs. Kate, what do you think? How do you think consumers need to approach lists that are not built for fantasy? What should they be looking for?
I said before, I'm not a fantasy person, so I am totally ill-equipped to answer this question, because I don't know what fantasy players look for. Strikeouts, big power numbers. I will say, obviously, like, if you're looking at an overall ranking of a player, that list is going to be less helpful to you. A list that will be helpful to you is some of the best tools lists. So I would look at some of those. Like, if you want a guy who's going to be high strikeouts, go for that who has the best fastball velocity list. If you want a guy who's going to hit a ton of home runs, go for that best power list. Like, you just have to kind of tailor them down. And again, as far as my understanding of fantasy goes, each league is different, right? And rewards you differently. So you want to customize that list, and you can start that from scooping from the list of the people who have who are identified as having the best tools for what you want to target.
Fantastic job. You're making a big thing about that. That's exactly the point. But you did something that I think is so important here, is it's finding the logic behind this type of stuff. So many people go into a list, check it out, boom, who's 20? That's who I got. That's not how you want to approach it. There are a lot more detailed stuff we can get into, but without your comfortability of it, you nailed huge key points to this. So great job on that. Blessing, say it's the exact same question. I think you have actually particularly done both sides of this. I think you have contributed to lists that were not based to fantasy and fantasy lists. So great thing to ask you. What do you think? How should people consume these lists when they're not built for fantasy? And I'm obviously talking about, I'm picking on like Pipeline and Baseball America, sometimes Fangraphs, so they have a fantasy one. These are lists that are out there for people that are not built for fantasy, and they get a ton of the readership.
Well, I think the best way to do this is like pick a player that people are familiar with. Christian Pache. Pache,
great one.
For me, I did the Lindy's Magazine baseball preview list, and I forget where I ranked him. I think I ranked him in the top 10, but like he's a near or top 10 prospect when you're looking at the whole scope of things, defensive abilities, and that kind of thing. But then you start looking at him as a fantasy guy, and he's has a hit tool. He's going to, hopefully hit for a decent average and stuff. He'll get to average power maybe. But his biggest tool on defense is really his reactions. He is a plus runner. On the bases, it doesn't translate as well. So I kind of back him down a bit when I'm looking at fantasy. Yes, he's going to be an outfielder, but is he going to be a top 5 contributor? And that's as a center fielder, yes, in real life, I guess you would call it, he is. But in fantasy, is he going to be a top 5 round guy? I mean, that's hard to see, and I've had a lot of experience with him. So that's maybe a little more complicated of an answer than, or a simple answer. But like that right there is kind of the difference right there, is you can take that one player and see him in different things. A player I just talked to a scout about was Alec Boehm. Inability to play third base or first base,
or do interviews,
with Chris Welsh. But I mean, I saw Eno interview him, and I mean, it was different. But
well, because Eno's smarter. Geez,
and he also
I wonder what that is.
I mean, he has a segment here, like an hour with Eno. So I mean, come on. But yeah, like we were talking, like they're evaluating him as an outfielder right now. We're still talking in fantasy as a third baseman. Like he's gonna, eventually get there. So like, there's more value with how weak third base is in fantasy baseball right now. There's more value to him remaining at third base for us, right? You guys agree?
I agree.
Yeah. But, I have a scout telling me here, like, yeah, there's no way he's going to stick there long term. Like, no way. So.
But, okay, it's great points. The Pache, and by the way, I want to point out, Bohm's totally fine. I got this. When I interviewed him, it was like in the back of Salt River Fields, and the guy just grabbed him, and we're in the hallway, and he's like, I mean, I can't say the things I want to say, but he's like, who is this? And he was totally nice. And as a good interviewer, I had fun questions at the end that I should have brought at the beginning, but I was just asking goofy questions. Eno's super smart and, beautiful hair, and he's much prettier than me. So it's a lot easier to get away with stuff with Eno, but Pache's a great one. James, it's the same question here. It's the same idea of lists. And, you predominantly live in a fantasy world, which I do as well, but you and I deal with people seeing like, Pache, top 10 on a list, but fantasy is completely different. And you have to answer to those questions a lot. So how do you think consumers should be reacting to those lists, and how do they use them?
I just don't think you should use those lists and apply them to fantasy. Like, I think you should have like fantasy lists, or make your own fantasy list or something like that. I can say that when I look at those lists, like I already have an opinion on the player as a hitter, and whether he's going to run and stuff like that. The only thing I'm looking at, if I'm looking at like Baseball America or something like that, like I want to see how good of a defender this guy is, because I might not know that, or maybe that's changed. And defense does matter to me. I think it's an underrated aspect of making a fantasy list, is you have to know what's the likelihood that this guy is going to be able to stay on the field because of his glove. Does this guy really need to hit to stay on the field? Like that stuff is stuff that I can't get necessarily from watching a few at bats or from looking at a guy's stat line.
Is this a catcher who's going to be a DH in the future and go from positional value to positional uselessness?
Like I faded Francisco Mejia and Willie Calhoun in the past, and I'm low on like Nick Solak right now, all because those guys just have such a high bar offensively to keep their bat in the lineup, and I think that's important to factor in.
And James, let me turn on the other side. Someone that I was always in defense of was Ke'Bryan Hayes, and his defense played a role in that. The power was always there. He just didn't make fantastic contact, and the type of contact where you're utilizing your power, he could run at a prime third base position, and guess what? Played really good defense. The type of defense, once he got to the bigs, wasn't going to take him off. That is a situation of adding that defensive value in to making that even a better fantasy option when people immediately discount the defensive side of their fantasy value.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I would say I just want to bring something that's Mariners relevant, but also I think fantasy relevant right now is like the great Julio versus Jared Kelenic debate. And where people are drafting them, I think is really interesting. Because here are two outfielders, both have like marginal defensive value. I don't think Kelnick's glove is looked at. It's definitely looked at as being stronger than Julio's, but for fantasy purposes, I would say they're about the same. So it's just what kind of a hitter do you want? Like, do you want Kelnick, who's going to be a higher average hitter? Do you want Julio, who's the big power guy? And again, I think you have to look at like what your particular league rewards and what else you have balancing out in your team. Because maybe you could really use a Jared Kelnick to push you up in some of those more general categories, or maybe you need a big power guy and then go get Julio.
Yeah, and I'm actually going, and I hate doing this, but James has had to deal with me with it. I'm gonna kill one of the questions, but I'm gonna this is so shameless. I'm gonna shamelessly tease everybody going and listening to my Prospect One show, the last 3 episodes, because I have had a continued conversation every single episode of not Julio versus Kelnick, but a new debate that has risen up. Kelnick versus Wander Franco. And I had James Anderson on, I had Ralph Lipschitz from Prospects Live, and then I had Patient Zero, Eddie Almengar, on just today that just released, as he was somebody that had released or it brought up a lot of the information of alt site as far as like EV and launch angle is going, and creating some more of the questions about these two comparisons. And I wanted to go there, but we're kind of running short on time. I want to answer a couple of questions, but I want to hit one quick one, and I'm going to be the scapegoat. I'm going to start here real quick, and let's burn through these so we can get to a couple of questions. I want to know about the one that still hurts. I want to know about the guy that you were like, yep, count it. That's the dude, my player. And then I'll tell you mine, because I'll bet you lots of my listeners would tell you. They could probably pick a whole bunch. I still have a little bit of time, but how about Nick Prado? James, you know my talking of Nick Prado 3 years ago. And that's one that I have been really, really wrong on for a time. He had such a natural swing. I was talking with Bill Mitchell from Baseball America. It was like 2017. We're in the backfields, and it was, this guy has the most prototypical swing. It is beautiful. It's easy. There's great loft. He had great projectable body, great defender. He could run some. I'm all in on Nick Prado. And then the bat regressed. The body regressed a little bit. There is some talk that there is a swing change that could be in play. And one big point I've been really hitting lately is that people do need to understand in this evaluating and scouting process, it is not a snapshot. It is not a singular moment in time of how they produce or what they do that tells the entire story. There's so many guys that have bucked that trend. Michael Kopech did that after 2 years of garbage minor league and spring training stuff. He comes in and bam, just lights it up. He's throwing off speed. He's got command. It is an entire story. So maybe I'm going to be right at some point, but right now it's a big old L for me on Nick Prado. Chris Blessing, who is the one that still hurts? I said try to be quick, but I just wasn't, so I want to be fair.
It's really, for me, I don't really have any that's just the one. I kind of move on pretty quickly when I'm wrong, you know.
How about Andres Jimenez? How about Andres Jimenez?
Andres Jimenez, I think I got that right.
James, weigh in. Did he get that one? Blessing was critical.
Is he a power hitter?
No, and you were right because he regressed, but then he brought back up and he kind of transformed his type.
Yeah, but I don't think the whole question that day was that the kid was going to hit 25 home runs, right?
I think Blessing nailed that, and maybe we just sort of underestimated the value of the stolen bases. And how much that would drive the program.
Yeah. Don't you dare turn this into how right you were, Blessing. I want to hear how you were wrong.
But you want a player. JD Martinez is a player. I saw him with Lexington Astros affiliate at the time. He looked like a quad 4 player. That is probably the guy. And I'll even go back and be like, well, I was a green evaluator at that time. But I know bat speed, and I know that kind of thing. I know feel for hitting, and I didn't think he had any. And I know that there's been several swing changes, and he really kind of with the technology, he really kind of embraced that before other people. So I guess that would be my one that got away, if there was one that got away. But I don't consider Andre Jimenez one that got away.
I was trying to get you, but I couldn't get you. Kate, really quickly, one that got away and still hurts for you.
One that I was wrong on, you mean?
Yes,
one
not
that I was
Blessing.
wrong. Yeah, no, I was totally wrong on Buddy Reed. I saw him at
Buddy.
I love Buddy Reed. I love him as a person. He's got a superstar personality. He looks like a superstar. After I saw him at the Arizona Fall League hit like a game-winning home run.
I interviewed him right after that. I have an interview right after. He was phenomenal.
Yeah. I was like, this guy's star is ascending. He's going to make so much noise. And those strikeouts have just, I need to learn that like high strikeouts are not, not always a fixable problem. And I always think that they can solve their issue. And I mean, I don't know. I'm a fan of a team that had Mike Zunino for a long time. Like, why don't I know that lesson yet? So
why don't we even try people can go back and listen to that Prospect One. He was such a great interview. He's such a great guy. By the way, here's some good ones. Shelly V said Carter Keyboom. You're not wrong.
I think there's still time.
Spore said Dustin Ackley. You and me both, brother.
Everyone. Literally everyone took the L on Dustin Ackley.
Dan says Jesus Montero. That one.
Wow, a lot of ex-Marin. This is hurtful. The commenters are choosing violence. And
I see Brady Zimmer and Nomar Mazzara, little Brendan Ryan. These are some great names. I love seeing. Nick chimed in. Nick Pavetta. Yay! You admit it. That's the first step. Lasting relationship.
I'll claim Nomar Mazzara. I was all in on him. I'll claim that. Yeah. I'm good with that.
Well, guys, he's like 25 years old. He still has 15 more years he could possibly play and be better, even though he feels like he's 35. All right, James, say last one for you. One that you got wrong that still hurts, and then I'm going to try to squeeze in a question or two.
Well, Mazzara is a good one, but I kind of flipped it, and I was just too low on Fernando Tatis Jr. I had him ranked 7th prior to 2018. I just thought he was going to strike out a ton, and I thought he was going to hit like 260, something like that. And I was just dead wrong about it, and that really hurts me because he's the type of player that I just absolutely love. I mean, he's one of my favorite players to watch, and it just kills me that I didn't have him higher.
Yeah. There's some great ones in here. I see a little Billy Burns in there, a little Matt Laporta. That one takes me back. Brennan Rodgers show up. These are fantastic ones. All right. I'm going to try to squeeze these in. And, Blessing, I'm going to ask you this one specifically. Quick answer. And then I'm going to go to Kate and James for a different question. But Chris, how much do you balance prospect pedigree versus your eyes when there's a discount? Because I struggle with that one. I will say in person, because I go to a ton, probably on the same marker as you, Blessing.
Yeah, you probably go to more.
Maybe I give a discount. I do give a discount. I will give benefit of the doubt sometimes when I see a high pedigree player struggle, and I will chalk that up as I need to see it again. I need to see it again. Where if there's a low pedigree player, I'll just move right past it sometimes. So that might be a deficiency of myself, is I do give prospect pedigree, but also prospect pedigree is kind of early success and previous signs of success. I still do that to this degree with my prospect list. Guys that did things early on that I like, I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt as they're going through the process. But quickly, what do you think? Prospect pedigree versus what you see if there's something missing when you see them in person?
I mean, you're usually there because of the pedigree. I've gotten the benefit that, doing this gig with the organization, I've gone and seen guys where, I'll be honest, I kind of give up, and I'll send in a report I don't like this guy, and then he ends up getting drafted in the 3rd round. So you just don't know. But for me, it's my eyes. If my eyes are deceiving me, then there's something wrong. And so I won't hang on a player. Earlier in my career, I would hang on a player because of pedigree, but the more and more I get into this, it's not worth it. There was a guy, and I probably shouldn't name names, but there was a guy, Bloodlines. He might be Miguel Castro's son. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see him as as a dude, but like I know that he got picked in the 4th round or 3rd round or something like that, and like someone had to like him, and you know, part of that is he has a pedigree. His dad was a major leaguer, and like that kind of thing. And it's not always a dad. It could be a great athlete. It could be a guy that everybody's told you is great, and then you see him and he's not really that great. But like, you know, there's always circumstances. I saw Kumar Rocker at his worst possible point in the last 4 or 5 years. But there was a reason for that. He was hurt, you know, he had a leg injury when I saw him, when I scouted him. So like those kind of things, like I don't cancel somebody that quickly.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've got to run because
go ahead. Go ahead, Blessing. Thank you so much for
evening. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. I would throw in too that I have a bad tendency, not just prospect pedigree, but I will hold on to early feelings on players. Something I will build into a player. I won't want to let go. So this last question, I'm going to alter it a little bit, just not to give everybody the kudos on what is named here. But this is from Yancey, and he asked this question, and Kate, follow with this because I think I'm going to alter it a little bit as well, because you said, you know, you're not super comfortable with fantasy, but you did such a great job answering that question before. Someone said that there is a podcast out there that says they have completely changed how they talk about on their podcast, and they completely cater to fantasy players as their vast majority of their audience. So they've catered their show to something they weren't before. And the question Yancey has is that for you? But, you know, Kate, you're very specific. You actually are kind of a catered niche. How do you deal with people that are coming at your product? You know, you're talking about the Mariners, and people are maybe negative, and you're trying to expand out and give people a bigger scope of like, oh my God, what if you don't like a player? So how do you deal with catering to your offense? Maybe to your audience. I'm sorry, maybe about 45 seconds. And I want to ask James as we're ending this.
I mean, I will say it's a lot more fun covering the Mariners farm system in 2020 than it was in 2017 or 2018 when it was, you know, I know prospect writers were drawing straws as for who had to write about the Mariners system. So it's been interesting. It's been interesting to see a lot more attention on the system. And especially because like I have been watching these guys for a long time, and like since they were drafted and really invested in them, I think there are a lot of Mariners that are underrated in the larger conversation. And I know that there are a lot of people at Pitcher List who agree with me that Logan Gilbert is severely underrated.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Yes, Logan Gilbert.
I completely agree with you on that. Well, let me get Nick. I know you want to turn us up, but let me get to. I just want to ask James that real quick, just real quick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Catering to fantasy players, James. I mean, this is what you do. How do you deal with the catering and people coming at you, especially when they're talking about real world? And is it what you do? That's what Yancey's at.
I mean, I feel like I maybe misunderstand the question.
Well, he's asking that people have changed how they talk about stuff on their podcast to now only cater to fantasy players. I mean, you are a fantasy centric one. So, you know, have you found that you've turned and only speak in fantasy?
I mean, I work for RotoWire, you know, I mean, like I
great answer.
Fantasy, right? Like I think a lot of these podcasts probably should cater to fantasy. I mean, I think you're right. What you said earlier, like people really wouldn't care that much about the minor leagues if it weren't for fantasy.
I think it's true. I do. I obviously cater. I do a whole lot. I talk to players. I talk fantasy. I talk real world stuff. I talk about my experiences. And I always love to talk with Nick Pollock.
I read that.
You didn't talk with me. You talked with them, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, but Dad's here. Dad's here, guys. We gotta get to bed.
One thing I want to say very quickly is apparently hedge fund managers are buying up baseball cards, and specifically like, did you know that? I just found out about this in the Blue Moon. So anyway, buy all your baseball cards before the greedy hedge fund managers can get their hands on them. I guess
I got all my cards I had from the 90s. So I haven't touched them for like 20 years. We'll see.
I have
something to sell to a hedge fund.
This back here, this is the look of talentlessness. Like when you don't have talent, the look is autographed baseballs and stuff like that. So that's what I have.
But anyway, so a couple things. Thank you all really for being a part of this. That was a fantastic panel about stuff that I know nothing about. I don't touch prospects, scouting. I don't do any of that. I just wait for them to come up here, and then I judge them harshly. So thanks for doing the hard work for all of us. I also want to mention that we just got our largest donation of $200.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Brian Carpenter.
Thank you,
It's
Brian.
huge. So thank you
Whoa,
so
Brian,
much.
part of the ITL Army there. I
Oh,
think.
is that
So,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
shout
man,
out
we're
to
so
Brian.
close to that $3,000
no.
mark for the shirt. We almost got there.
Almost.
I get him
Really,
that
really
shirt.
close. But definitely go to that link below. It's go.rallyup.com/PitchCon. We're doing this for a fantastic cause. We're feeding America. So I hope you can support what we're doing here. I mean, this
Do
is
it.
4 days of just talking about baseball with incredibly smart people like all of you. So really, thank you guys so much for being part of this.
Thanks
you,
for
guys.
having me.